The biblical norm is a plurality of leaders. There may be a senior leader, there may be a senior pastor, but he's only the primus inter pares, the first among equals. He may be unique, God's hand may be upon him, but he is not an autocrat. It never worked like that. There's an idea of, some people call it the Moses principle. Even the Moses principle was not the Moses principle. God sent people like Jethro to advise Moses. Moses shared leadership with other people. Now, he was the head honcho, and he was unique in that he had a unique relationship with God, typifying Christ in the Old Testament. He saw the back of the Lord and so forth. The Lord spoke to him directly, something unique about Moses. But that doesn't happen to pastors today. That doesn't happen to pastors today. Be careful when leadership becomes a one-man show. It will become hierarchical, and in the long term, it'll become something bad. Look at Calvary Chapels. I loved Chuck Smith. He was my friend. He was a man of God. The Lord used him. And it was my appeal, and I'm not saying anything that, I'm speaking the truth in love, and I'm not saying anything to be critical or condescending. But I made it known, look, if you're going to have the Moses principle, have it. Moses trained Joshua and Caleb for years before he stepped out of the picture. In the Moses principle, you have to have an heir apparent who's been chosen by God and groomed for that. Otherwise, some theocratic huckster is going to take over. And that's what happened in Costa Mesa. That's what happened in Costa Mesa, California, something that never should have happened. And it was a departure from the teaching of Chuck Smith, who was my friend in many respects. There's safety and an abundance of counselors. I believe the New Testament model of leadership is plural. Now, I accept there was something unique about Moses, but even there, God never made him stand alone except when he stood before the Lord. Moses stood before the Lord alone on Mount Horeb. He stood before the Lord alone, but he was never called to stand before the people alone. A pastor, a leader, a mission director, and anything may stand before the Lord alone, but they are not called to stand before the people alone. We have to remember that. This idea, us against them, is better than us against him. It's just a bad situation. Now, again, I have a lot of friends in Calvary Chapels, and I have a lot of friends who are Calvary pastors, and I like Calvary Chapels for the most part. I disagree with certain things, such as pre-tribulation, obviously, that most Calvaries, howbeit not all, hold to. And I don't like the way that they've deviated into things that Chuck Smith never taught or believed. But I certainly like Chuck Smith, and I appreciated the way God used Calvaries. But I knew that once Chuck went to be with the Lord, things were going to dissipate, and they have. They have to a large degree. I know many Calvary pastors who've taken down the dove, and they're disillusioned by what's become of it and what's happened at Costa Mesa. It's very, very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. But that's what happens. Leadership is plural. There may be a first among equals. There may be a senior elder, a senior pastor. There may be that. And that has to be recognized. However, a leader stands before God alone. He does not stand before the congregation alone. We have to remember that. Okay. Let's look. Take some of the elders, take the staff of authority in your hand, and I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he named the place Maaseh and Meribah because of the quarrel. And the sons of Israel, because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? Now, to them it meant, is God going to give us what we want or not? Well, yeah, he is, in his way and on his time. But if you didn't keep grumbling all the time, you wouldn't have had it by now. Each time a test is failed, the next time becomes more difficult. Oh, yes, Lord, I repent. I've learned what you wanted to teach me. I got it this time. Okay. But the next time, the circumstances will always be more difficult. We have an old recorded Moriel teaching on the boats, straining at the oars and so forth. The second time, when there was the storm-tossed Dugit, the fishing boat on the Sea of Galilee, was worse than the first time. Every time we fail a test, either individually or corporately, it's going to become more difficult the next time until we finally get it right.